mean to step on you. Good morning. I'm going to make this bit short because we have got a lawnmower, which we didn't have a minute ago, but we did have aeroplanes. So I'm kind of jumping between noises. I'm sorry if you can't hear me very clearly. But it is, when is it? It's right at the beginning of October. And yeah, which seems extraordinary. I can't believe it's already October. September seems to, well, actually August and September. It was just like, whoosh. But yeah, so today we are doing a plot tour. We're going to have a look around the whole allotment and see where we are for the beginning of October 2022. We've got another plane. Like, let's go. What are you doing, Lil? I dropped some cat biscuits that she normally turns her nose up at. Like if you try and give her these cat biscuits, she doesn't want to know, but I've dropped them on the floor and suddenly they're incredibly exciting. There's those ones. Don't know what she's doing. Anyway. Apple trees. All the apples are gone now. The ones off this tree were phenomenal. And do you remember that I found one at the bottom of this tree that I hadn't realised was there? Well, it vanished again after I'd seen it and we didn't get it. So I don't know who nicked that. Probably a squirrel. Hey Rube, how you doing? Now there's only two girlies, huh? How you doing? Mint is looking fantastic. I gave that a really big chop back. Hey Flo, little girlie. She does seem to have cheered up, little love. Poor sweetheart. So on the bean bed where I've got all the self-seeded Phacelia, we've still got this trellis which we were using to stop the badgers, and the Phacelia's grown through it, but so has the beans, and now we can't take it off because it will just wreck the beans, so we're stuck with that for the moment. But the beans are producing, amongst the black fly, little beans. It's exciting, loads and loads of flowers, so hopefully we'll get a crop off them before it turns cold. These are the ones which got dug out and we replanted. I mean, you can see they're just so stunted compared to the big chaps who were left alone. So it's a shame that we didn't get a whole bed of them, but we should get enough. And we're also going to get some free Phacelia, which is, can't complain. Still haven't got round to moving what's in this bed. Obviously the parsley's not going to get moved. That's the Lisette, the beautiful curly one. But things like the thyme, I'm going to shunt out of this bed. Look at that. Parsley flowers are so underrated. They are magical. But yeah, the thyme and the chives in that corner, I'm going to get out of this bed and get them into the herb bed, I think. Mulberry tree is definitely starting to feel the change of season. You can see the leaves are starting to turn. And this is just big project for me this autumn. I've got to get all of these pots out of here, clean them up and work out what we've got, because when I first made this potting bench, it was so organised. I had them all in size order and it was all brilliant, made life really easy, and it's all just gone to pot. So I need to get in there and sort all of that out and then remake this bench on this side. But it's good, that will be an excellent project for winter. Dahlias are still flowering magnificently. This white one, actually, this is only its second flower of the year, but it is lovely. I'm going to get that in the bed. This one is a bit rain beaten. I'm not going to go into the greenhouse during this tour because I'm going to do a whole lot on what I'm doing in there next week. The cucumbers are completely finished. We got some good cucumbers off them, but that's all over. But as I say, that's going to be next week. The cranberry is still waiting for a home. Yes, I know. I know, chap. I'm so sorry. But I've got a cage to build before I put you in the bed. So just hold tight. Hold tight, you'll be fine. Gorgeous verbena. Actually, the verbena has been incredible this year. So good. It really, really enjoyed that heat. Still haven't got round to moving this bed. And the swing seat is looking like it's about to be unveiled at a ceremony at the moment, but never mind. This whole area here, I'm going to reseed while we've still got the marginally warm weather. I'm just going to throw a load of seed down in there. We used to have a terrible time reseeding because our old girls used to eat all of the grass seed. Should just be able to seed it, and then by next spring it'll be lush and gorgeous. And I'll also seed under this bed when I've moved it, when we've eaten this beetroot. We've really got to get round to eating this beetroot, but my dad's declared that he now no longer likes beetroot, so it's become a bit more tricky to get through, but you know, never mind. I'll make some soup or something. The rocket on this end of the bed has been discovered by the pigeons, so where it was really quite lush and ready to be picked, it's now a bit like sticks, but I'll throw a bit of netting over that, and because the plants are quite well established, they will recover in no time, so it should be good. Under here, the coriander has gone to seed, but being under this EnviroMesh box seems to have really protected it from sort of the wind, and it's made it really, really lush, and even the flower stems are soft and beautiful, so we'll be able to eat all of that, without having to just pick off the leaves, which is a bit annoying with coriander. Carrots, I've been picking quite a lot of these. As you can see, I didn't thin them very well. They're all a bit bunched in, but there are some pretty good sized ones in there, so that's not too bad, and they're looking quite lush. And all of those aphids that I discovered a couple of weeks ago seem to have vanished, so that is a pretty tick. Obligatory weed in the box. Actually, one of the things I do really appreciate about Enviromesh is that it mostly stops weed seed blowing in, which is handy. Talking of weed seed, the tree spinach is about to make a nuisance of itself, but I'm encouraging that this year. Look at these zinnias. I just, how have I not appreciated zinnias before? It's just magical, absolutely magical. Beautiful flowers as well. We've got the asparagus is in flower now. These guys really suffered in the heat and went into sort of an early autumn, which is what all of this stick growth is. That's kind of already happened. And then it had a second flush. It produced loads more asparagus spears, and that's what's all going now. So it's kind of had two flushes. I'm hoping that's not going to have a detrimental effect on it next year, but only time will tell, really. In here is a weed catastrophe. So I'm going to have to get into there because we're going to be planting strawberries through there. Look at this. Garlic chives are back. I love them. They are one of the prettiest. Stunning. Runner beans and tromboncino arch started off very poorly and has actually come good. The variety that we grew this year was Moonlight, which have turned out to be delicious, really nice. Once they got going, beautiful long tender beans, totally stringless. But next year we're going for a different variety. We're going to go for an update of a classic, which is Scarlet Emperor. They've updated it to Scarlet Empire, which is kind of a modified version, and the main reason that I'm doing that is not because these beans weren't delicious, but because I want the orange flowers, and I just felt like I was missing that like runner bean orange. So next year we're going back to orange, and hopefully we'll have a full arch next year and they won't have to share with the tromboncino. Although the tromboncino have been fantastic. This is our first year growing them. I've eaten them before because neighbours have grown them, but first year growing them, they've done really well over an arch, so we might put one of the single arches over to them next year. They're just a joy of a plant. Look at those beautiful curlies. They're so lovely and they're so fluffy. I'm not that impressed with them as old fruit, but as young fruit eaten like courgettes, they are top notch. I really like them. But yeah, it's the fluff. Look at the fluff. I just think they're so sweet. More parsley. Parsley's done fantastically this year. What was left alone by the pigeons. More tree spinach. I'm just hoping it's going to self-seed all over the show next year. These are the strawberries which are going to be moved into the asparagus bed. So that's something we've really got to get onto. Mum's taken a lot of the runners off and we'll move the really good strong plants. These are gorgeous. So this is the purple asparagus, and look how gorgeous their little flowers are compared to the plain green ones. They're so sweet. Such pretty plants, asparagus. You just don't sort of realise. They are beautiful. No, I still haven't got round to dividing the rhubarb. That is on my never-ending to-do list. The other asparagus bed seems to be much further advanced into autumn. Funnily enough, it wasn't affected by the heat anywhere near as much as the other bed, but it's sort of going faster now it's autumn. More zinnias. Look at these buds. Like, it's the black lacing around the outside of those kind of outer leaflets. Oh, they're so pretty. So pretty. So one of these arches is going to be given over to the tromboncino next year. Total fail on these this year. Combination of things. Slug damage was just catastrophic. But also we've had a real battle with bindweed because it's coming over from next door. And it is just becoming a bit of a pain. So we're actually going to move all of these arches next year away from this border and keep the strip down this edge completely clear so that we can get on top of the bindweed because it's becoming a bit of an issue. So all of these arches are going to be out of the way come spring. One of the raging successes of this year though has been the Belotti beans. They have been so prolific. I had loads of germination problems with beans at the beginning of the year. These ones were the only ones that kind of germinated fully, and we're already starting to dry off. So this is the kind of stage that you pick them when they've got that really papery sound when you touch the pods. So once all of these start drying off, I will be shelling them and freezing them. So you can just store them dried in jars, but so far I've always found that they end up with weevils in them. So we've just started freezing them and then they're absolutely perfect for the whole year. In fact, we've still got some left over from last year, but get on those. Otherwise we're gonna have a double up with these asparagus berries. Look very festive. This was actually a variety called cranberry, which we grew last year as well, and it's outstanding. Brassica cage for the permanent brassicas. I need to rework this. This cage itself will be fine for smaller brassicas, but it's just too short for these guys. I thought they would have another year in them. The brassicas have grown way more than I thought they were going to. So these tree cabbages, the ones that I had before, were so much shorter than these guys. These guys have really grown up and they're growing through the top of the netting, and then the pigeons are just taking them off at the top, which is a bit of a shame. So this cage is going to go over the short brassicas, and I will try and protect these ones with a taller wooden frame. I had no idea that the 9-star broccoli was going to get that tall, but you can see the pigeons have just been sitting on top of the netting, leaving presents for me on the leaves. But yeah, they've just been sitting on here and taking them off at the top. But this 9-star broccoli, for some reason I thought it was going to be quite short, and it's not. It's massive. So this cage, I thought it was going to last about a year on this bed. I need to replace it. Proper indicator of how chilly it's been. I was saying this the other day that the Ichikukuri have completely collapsed. We've taken one large one out of the centre of the bed and we've got a couple more in there. The leeks, I mean, touch wood, are looking fab, which is great. This is goosefoot. Actually, this is the same plant basically as the tree spinach, but this is not one I want to self-seed. It is a real pain. And just get rid of that before it throws its seed everywhere. As you can see, that is exactly what it's about to do. So I'm not going to put this in the compost because that would be a disaster. So the calendula have really come good quite late in the year, which is a joy. This whole end of this bed is just like self-seeded flowers, including this verbena, which has also, you can see how many flowers it's had. It's like they have been prolific this year, really, really lovely. But the calendula did nothing first half of the year, and now it's in its full glory. This is the other large Ichikukuri we've got under here. It's not quite ready. You see that stem? Once that stem looks like cork bark, then we'll take it off. That's what you're looking for. But I'm hoping that this calendula is just going to self-seed everywhere. So their heads go like that, little like curly worms. And hopefully they're just going to chuck themselves all along this edge. Give it a bit of a helping hand. Above the top of here is the Achocha, which again took a really, really long time to do anything this year. This is a variety I've not actually seen for sale before. I originally got the seed for this off a bloke called Ash up in Yorkshire. I don't know where he got his original seed from because these are really smooth, and the ones that they normally sell are called, is it Fat Baby? And they're really spiky. So I'm going to continue growing this one, but I'm going to add to the collection next year and grow one that's a giant one from Real Seeds. These ones are about, what, 4 inches long. The ones on Real Seeds, the giant ones, are about 7 or 8 inches long, and I'm hoping we'll be able to stuff them because they're quite robust, but these ones are just a little bit too small to do that with. So hoping to grow a mixture of the two. We will be a Achocha rich next year. This bed needs a lot of work. It was supposed to be the parsnip bed. I don't know if you remember. I ended up putting a load of tomatoes in because the parsnips were just wiped out by slugs and snails. We've got about maybe 6 at that end, and these tomatoes were kind of my last ditch attempt. You know what happened with the tomatoes earlier. It wasn't a great success. But we've got maybe 6 parsnips in here out of about, God, I can't even remember how many I sowed. Must have been 100. But they are looking quite big. I don't know if there's anything under there. I don't know if I can feel anything yet. No, I think he's all shirt and no trousers, but never mind. Hopefully by Christmas we'll have something in here. You know, surprisingly, we found it to be quite a good year for raspberries, which is odd because they normally like it really, really wet. And that was the one thing we certainly weren't earlier this year. The grapevine has just completely taken over, but I was so inspired by the majesty of the grapevines in France. I'm going to really put some work into that this year. I'll show you where I'm going to train it when we get inside the fruit cage. but Mum has just been in there attempting to sort it out because it is absolute shambles in here. But there are still loads of raspberries, so I cannot complain. Nom nom nom. Still so good this late in the year. That's going to be another job that's going to be on the list fairly shortly, because they're all autumn fruiters. Cut them all off. Next year's pecans. Oh, I'm looking forward to peas. So grape is going to have a serious chop back, and it's going to go up and along in a nice tidy straight line, hopefully with loads of fruit next year going all the way along the top of this railing. I might try and get it in 2 tiers rather than just the one. But one of the things that's gone mad in here this year, and we probably should have taken a lot of them out, is the nasturtiums. Gooseberries need to be tied back in, but they were really good last year. Remember I fan trained them? Well, they've gone nuts, but I will just push all of that new growth back into the wall and they should be fine. Ah, yeah. Do you remember that I planted a new blackcurrant and a new red currant in here earlier this year, like right at the beginning of spring? Well, the blackcurrant really suffered, but it is coming back. We've got new growth on here. Slightly worried about the red currant, which lost all its leaves in the drought despite being watered, but it does look, it's got little, I mean, I'm optimistic. That does look like something's going to happen. It's not totally dry. I've done the little scratch test at the base and it is still green underneath. So I'm hoping that spring comes and it's going to burst into life. If not, we're going to be on the lookout for a new red currant. But yeah, the nasturtiums have just gone completely nuts in here. Should have just ripped them out as they were germinating because it's all self-seeded, but they're just so lovely. And because they're self-seeded, there's just so many different sort of variations on the flowers. Like this one is really, really orange. And this one's kind of like salmon pink, which is rather beautiful. This one's mostly yellow. Yeah, Project Wood. Loads of things that I want to use that for over winter, so that's going to be all sorts of fixing things up, particularly around the shed. And you, Berta, yes, I shall also be fixing you up. Poor girl, she really does need a bit of help. The netting is still on the apricot tree. We've got most of it off actually, but it's so difficult because you put it on like when the fruit just starts getting ripe, and then it's on there for a while, and then all the branches, you know, it all just grows through the netting, and then it's so much more difficult to get it off than it is to put it on. So we're kind of halfway through that, but I'm going to have to prune the tree fairly shortly, so, and then we'll be chopping off any of the netting that gets stuck, so not a disaster. Little Rose is still powering on under here with its freckles. We're in a bit of a poor cycle with the fig tree. This is exactly what happened to us last year. So at the end of the season, we were left with all of these immature but quite large figs. And then they didn't survive the winter. They just rotted out in the cold. Whereas it's supposed to be, at this stage, you're supposed to have loads of little tiny pea-sized ones, which can then survive the winter and then become your crop in the summer. But we're in this sort of cycle with this fig tree where everything's just out of whack, which is a bit of a shame. And then you don't know whether to pick these off or to leave them on, or yeah. The pak choi that's under here is looking fantastic. We're gonna have to pick some of these fairly shortly because I planted them quite close together. The lettuces that are outside the box have sort of survived. They are being eaten, but enough. It's the colour of this. This is just called red choy. It's like a really bog standard variety, but I think it's so beautiful, so beautiful. Mustard greens, this is green wave. The slugs seem to have gone through and eaten sort of every other one or every sort of 2 or 3, which has sort of thinned them out for me, which is quite nice of them really. I wish I could get them to do things like that with the carrots. Sadly, they just scoff the lot. Normally. More to-do list stuff. All this compost is going to have to be turned fairly shortly. Bin 1, so the green bin is full, so I need to get on that so we can start putting the autumn clearance stuff in the bin, because at the moment there's no space. Look at the glory that is the artichokes though. These are the Jerusalem artichokes. Do you remember I planted these little tiny chaps out in the spring? Well, they're looking beautiful. More calendula underneath the pear tree. One of the things I really like about letting things self-seed like this, like with the nasturtiums, is that you get much more variety than if you just grew one out of a packet. So this one's really, really pale, and then this one's quite orange and feathery, which is lovely. And look at the buds with those red stripes on there, so pretty. And do you remember me telling you, like, it must have been like 2 weeks ago, that the pear tree was flowering again? Everything's just out of whack. Although we did get a couple of really nice pears off this tree this year, so I'm pretty happy for its second year. The crown prints have done practically nothing. This is the only chap we've got, and it's tiny, look at that. Gonna have to really sort out this bed this year. Some of these really need splitting, so I'll dig a lot of them up and split them and maybe get some around the back of the pond as well as in this bed. This one never flowered at all last year, so I'm really pleased with that little chap. And also we've got some Bishop's Children which were grown from seed, and they are flowering too. So that's pretty. They're very spindly at the moment, so hopefully they are going to beef up a bit for next year. The American cress that I transplanted last week looks like it's all taken, which is handy. So that should get to about 30 centimetres tall eventually. Kohlrabi are all still in there, just about. And this is the lamb's lettuce, which seems to be really struggling for some reason. So what I'm going to do is transplant quite a lot of this into the polytunnel and use this as a bit of a seed bed, really, because they're not doing very much, which is a bit strange. Shimmy wrap up. Still looking lush and fantastic. This is the self-seeded stuff, so I'm super happy that this came good, and it tastes fantastic. I was worried that it would be quite bitter, but it's not. The other artichoke, so the globe artichoke that keeps dying on us, is back again. It's like a resurrection monster, that. One of my favourite chard varieties is under here. This is the Lucullus. You will have heard me talk about it so often. It's the really pale green one, and it cooks down a lot more like, oh look, the spider hanging off my phone. Go on there, chap. Yeah, it cooks down much more like spinach than most of the chards. It's really, really soft. Coming up soon, I'm going to have to do a whole vlog basically on this pond area because it needs loads and loads of work, and it's all just got away from us a bit this year. Tons of bits and pieces in here. But I think we're just going to have to pull most of this out and start again with some wildflower seed next year, because it's just got into havoc and there's grass got in there, and you know, once the grass gets in, no good. We've also got a lot of thinning out to do in the pond itself. So yeah, I think probably a whole vlog episode is going to be done on the pond. Hot Lips has recovered. It went all white earlier, but it has started to get its little pink bits back, which is lovely. And just like the pear tree, the Cox's orange pippin tree is also in flower. Silly chap, you've got it all wrong. You've got it all wrong. Yeah, this tree needs a bit of work actually. I transplanted this, 2 years ago now, and it's got a couple of dead branches on there that I will need to take off. But I mean, it looks all right other than that. And that this main branch that's coming up the top looks really good. So I'm not worried that it's on its way out, but just needs a bit of help. Honeysuckle and bug box. Need to tie that honeysuckle in. It's practically completely covered the water butt. And this, the nerines are all coming up. Sure sign of autumn.
Hello. What are you doing?
And underneath here is where we have Mills. She is forever in the wildflower bed now. Sage is looking good, velvety and beautiful. Let me chop that back. Actually, this is something else I need to chop back. So this is the oregano, and it grows kind of, you get this burst of growth, and then it kind of tires out on the top, and you get this lovely soft growth underneath. So I will chop all of this off indiscriminately at about that level, so it's just sticking up, and then it will have another beautiful big flush of soft growth underneath. Chives, hyssop. This is also supposed to be a herb bed, but we rescued a sedum, stuck it in there, and it's taken over. More calendula. As you can see, there is actually a rosemary and a thyme underneath there. struggling. I know, chap, I'll clear some space for you, I promise. Tomatoes are still coming in the polytunnel. However, it is not looking snaz in here. Everything's about over. I'm going to pull off all the ripe tomatoes. Geez, there's very few green in here. So I think we're going to be all right for not making 20 buckets of green chutney, which is handy because I really don't like it. Having said that about the green, this has been the star tomato for me this year, green zebra. And as long as you let them go yellow, like how this one at the top is, absolute star. Such a good tomato. I'll be saving seed from that. Aubergines are coming to an end, the purple ones, but this is the first one we've had of it. Little tiny white chap. Don't think we're going to get much off this plant other than that though. But the rest of the aubergines have been pretty good, and the Thai basil's been brilliant. It's coming to an end now, obviously, because it is flowering. We've been sort of chopping the flowers off if they come, but I think we're probably at the end now. Peppers are still having a go. I can't be too downhearted about it though. We have had peppers. I mean, this little green chap here, Bellboy, we have had a couple of peppers off it. It's just not been the year for it for us. Not been the year. Did anyone else find that their courgettes went through a bit of a flat patch when we started having all the rain? They were doing really well when it was hot, hot, hot. Thought they would have loved the rain, and they just completely stopped. It was all male flowers, and now we're just starting again with the females. I don't know if it's too late. I suppose it depends on the weather. We've got a couple coming in here. The plants themselves look all right though. These are the ones that weren't dug up, and they're providing pretty good cover actually for the what was this, the purple sprouting that I planted under here. You can see the ones which are kind of nestled into the plants are doing fine. They're still going, but the ones that were out on the open, we've had to cover with, you know, cut in half water bottles to protect them because they're being got by the pigeons. So actually it's worked out quite well, them being nestled in here under the courgettes. Patty pan has pretty much come to an end. I haven't ripped it out yet though, because can you see under there? Hang on, let me just see if I can get in under this box. It's still producing things. I mean, I don't think it's going to come to anything, but I don't want to rip it out just yet. And the other courgette in here is looking lush, but nothing on it. I've been proven wrong about rhubarb chard this year. I avoided growing it for years because I didn't like the red chard that comes in the Bright Lights mix, but this, just the plain rhubarb one, delicious. So that will be on my list for next year, joining the peppermint chard. Along with everything else, this bed needs a bit of a sort out. This is the leaf chicory, which is a joy. Absolutely love it. We've got some really, really good ones in here, but once it starts to go to flower, it's just inedibly bitter. It is just disgusting. So I will whip this one out, but we've still got a couple which have got beautiful clear hearts in them, so I will cut them off and we will be eating them. I've got to do some weeding in here because just weeds everywhere, but there's still plenty to eat in this bed, which is nice. And there's also the pak choi. Oh, look, a hearting chicory. Didn't even know that was in there. It's exciting. But there's pak choi behind there, green ones, if you can see them in a line. Not been obliterated by the slugs, which is a pleasant surprise. These kohlrabi, which were the spares from the other bed, seem to be doing so much better. Typical. More beetroot. Like I say, my dad's decided he doesn't like it anymore, so we're not getting through it quite as fast as we should be. So we have a bit of an excess. Cavallonero has properly settled in. It's stopped being dug up, which I'm thrilled about, which means it's been able to put on quite a lot of growth. We will start eating that fairly soon, I think. And the cabbages that I put down the centre are all still in place. So tick, tick, tick. More calendula. This one's so pretty. Actually, it's little fluffy feathers like that, and the red and the orange reminds me of Mills. Oh, little sauce. Little sauce. Hey, girlies. Hey, Flo. I know, it's sad, isn't it? She's gone. And we're back down the other end now, chaps. Sorrel is still going strong. I really want to sow some more of this, but I just get terrible germination from it. So we're just kind of holding on to those plants as long as we can. Perpetual spinach has taken off fantastically. We've had 2 years of terrible, and now it's off. There's no rhyme or reason to any of it. It just doesn't seem to. You will be not surprised to find out that those little dill that I planted are doing practically nothing. But the tatsoi are all right, and this box is working out a treat. I need to cut some more of these ends. I still need to cut them. God, my to-do list is just never ending. It's never ending. And that is the start of October. The stuff that's in the greenhouse is going to go out, and I'll be showing you that like in the next week. A lot of it's going to go into the polytunnel, but like you saw in there, it's not looking magical. So a lot of that stuff is going to be coming out this week, also like in next week's vlog. And I'll be getting a lot of that stuff in there. I've got some things that I think I'm going to transplant from out here. You know, like I said, some of the lamb's lettuce that hasn't really kicked off. That didn't love the hot weather that we had earlier, so I think I'm going to transfer quite a lot of that into the polytunnel because it did brilliantly in there last winter. I've got a load of lettuces to go in there. I've got chard to go in there, obviously. And yeah, and I wanted to get some beetroot in there. I thought I'd sown some beetroot like mid-August, but I don't seem to have any growing, so I don't know what's happened there. I'm sure I've got a tick next to beetroot on the list, but it's vanished. It's vanished, so I won't be putting that in unless I start some off now. I suppose I could. Don't know what the weather's going to do we? No. Anyway, what I'm going to do now is, now I'm feeling inspired, like looking at what we've got and the things that are going to come out, so we're going to have a bit more space in the bed soon. I'm going to go home and assess the spreadsheet of glory, or the spreadsheet of varieties. I said before that I was trying to be a bit more... I suppose methodical is not the right word, but a bit more reined in on the varieties that I choose for next year. And I've already started that process, and I've been getting them into a spreadsheet, trying to plan my planting a bit better than I did last year, because, okay, so there was a lot of stuff going on right at peak planting time this year, like other life things took over. So I didn't get a lot of that done. But I think that I could have helped myself with that if I had already had a plan written out, and I didn't. So I'm going to get my plan together like now, between now and Christmas, and then hopefully next year I won't have to kind of try and hold all the information in my head. It will just all be there for use. Anyway, I'm going to talk to you about spreadsheets when I get home, so buckle up, it's going to be exciting. Haha! Right. Spreadsheets might not be the most exciting thing ever, but I love seeing how other people plan what they're going to be growing and where they're going to be growing it. And my kind of system evolves every year into something else. And this year I realised, as I keep saying, that actually not having a plan, you're just relying on your own head, not having that plan already worked out of when you're going to sow things. Obviously it has to be fairly flexible because each year is different. I just want to have a bit more of a plan already in place for next year, so that if things do go wrong again, in terms of like not allotment things but other things, then I've already got it just written out there for me, and I don't have to think, because it's the planning process that just takes up so much brain space. And I think if I'd had a system like this last year, the season would have been a lot more productive, particularly earlier on, when I hadn't got things straight in my head. But this would have helped. So that is my plan, just to try and put a bit of a safety net in for next year if things start going awry. Let's have a look at the spreadsheet. So I have been messing around with different formats for putting in stuff into a spreadsheet that I want to grow, and I tend to have two, but I've got, do you see all of these boxes behind here? They are just jam-packed full of seeds, and a lot of the things are exciting varieties, but they're not necessarily the thing that I really most want to grow to eat, if you know what I mean. So what I've been trying to do is narrow down the varieties that I would feel bereft if I didn't grow next year. So I'm just going to start with tomatoes as an example, because tomatoes I'm going to really try and focus on next year, because I had such a poor year this year. Not to do with any of the life drama it was purely because something just went catastrophically wrong, but I do feel a bit aggrieved that I missed out on them. So the tomatoes are going to be a big thing next year, and most of these are the same as I was going to grow last year. So just looking at the tomatoes, I've just broken them down into the big fat chaps. They're not all beefsteak, but I've decided to just call them beefsteak. I know what it means. It just means they're big. Plum, mid-size and cherry. And the little group in here that is not usual, if you can see where they say outside. So I was given, when the tomatoes went wrong last year, I was given some short season tomato seed. And although it didn't work last year because I was just that bit too late, I'm going to try them for outside next year, which means that I can actually grow more varieties than I can fit inside the polytunnel, which is tick. So that is that lot there. I will be growing outside. The rest of them are all going to be in the polytunnel, and what I've got is the main vegetable, the main type of vegetable. I've ummed and ahed about what to do with this. I never know whether to break them into like solanums, cucurbits, but I've decided to just simplify it. So anyway, tomatoes. Then this column, you've got roughly sort of what they are. Then we've got the varieties. And then this column here, which is the tick box column, that is all for whether or not I've actually already got the seed or whether I need to get the seed. So it's kind of like an inventory, but I've got way more seed than is going to be on this list in here. I'm sorry, I've come home to record this and there's a lawnmower right outside my window as well. Not only did we have lawnmowers at the allotment, we've now got lawnmowers here. I'm so sorry, that's not even a lawnmower, that is a chainsaw. Okay, he stopped for a second, let's get on with it. So, and then the bit that is going to really help is pre-planning when I'm going to sow things so that I can, for two reasons. So firstly, I can just look down that month and be like, right, this is when I need to sow this, this is when I need to sow this, this is this, you know, just already there for me. But I also, it's going to help me, I hope, plan which beds things are going to go into. So I'm hoping that this section of the spreadsheet here is going to really help out with that. So I've broken each month down into 2 boxes. So you've got the first half of the month and the second half of the month for the whole of the year. I've got indoor sowing, outdoor sowing, planting out, harvest. Obviously, these things are guesstimates. You can't be dead on. Don't know what the weather's going to do. But it kind of gives you an idea. And as long as you leave a bit of leeway, I think it's going to work. You know, you buy like an allotment planning book or something and it tells you all these things. Well, it's all very well and good somebody else telling you when to do things, but sometimes one of the cabbage varieties you want to grow happens to be a really early one. It's not in that list, so I kind of just think making my own is going to be beneficial. Also, I'm hoping that I'm going to be able to add to this over the year, so I'll be able to make notes of what actually happened. So when on the back of the seed packet it says ready in 60 days and actually it took 90, I'll be able to write that down in this spreadsheet, and then for next year I will be able to extend the time that it's going to be in a particular bed. Who's back? Down this column here will be my bed plan. So far all I've got is grow site, which at the moment I've just got poly, outside poly. Further down here we've got things like greenhouse and also home. So some things are going to be grown. Actually, this was that cucumber experiment that I started this year. I started them in January. And they are still producing cucumbers now in the conservatory downstairs. They have been fantastic. So I'm doing that again next year. But that, as you can see, is home site. I'm going to sow them in the first week of January, or the first half of January, and then they'll start producing mid-March all the way through to October. Whereas my other cucumbers, which are going to be grown in the greenhouse, I will sow either the first or second week of March, so sometime around there depending on the weather, and I wouldn't expect them to start producing until July. Okay, so we've got 2 options here. I could either share my database, but not with my info in it, but just with like the columns, or I could do a really short tutorial on how to just set it up. It is done in Google Sheets, so it's completely available online. It's free. If you've got a Gmail address, it's all free. I could do it as a little tutorial. Let me know underneath if you would rather me just share the basic so that you've just got a direct copy of mine, or whether you would want me to do a little tutorial on how to do it and then you can modify it however you want to modify it. Let me know. Let me know. But yeah, basically that is where I am at the moment with the spreadsheets. I've got all of these seed to go through. I mean, I'm not kidding. Just chicory, right? Just chicory. You wouldn't think chicory would need its own category. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 varieties of chicory. What kind of girl needs 9 varieties of chicory? But there's just masses of them. There is masses. And like I was saying about the runner beans this year, where I thought the Moonlight was a great runner bean, great tasting runner bean, but I didn't realise how much I missed the proper orange flowers of runner beans. Like, it's such an old allotment site, just those fantastic orange flowers all the way across. It's so recognisable. And I didn't have them this year, and I felt really aggrieved about it. So that is like a priority for next year. And I kind of worked that out when I was putting this together. So that's really handy. And then I ordered the seed on fire. So I've done a lot of things. Having the list and having that checkbox next to them, I think is going to make a big difference, because I think in my head, like, oh, it was like tromboncinos. I thought early in the year, I was like, oh, I really fancy growing tromboncinos. Good one. I did actually have them on my list, and then I went down to, there's a little plant shop, actually I'll take you to the plant shop next week I think, called the Plant Rooms, just down in Richmond. Oddly enough, it's actually an outreach bit of Camden Garden Centre, which I used to spend a lot of time in when I lived up there, but they've got a little one in Richmond now. It's just a little shop, but out the back they've got Frankie seeds, and I saw tromboncinos. I was like, brilliant, I'm going to get them. Came back, put them in the drawer, lovely. Was doing an order, and I was like, oh yeah, tromboncinos, I wanted to grow this. I bought 3 packets in the end, 3 packets of these blooming things from all over the place. I already had them, so I'm hoping, tick box, that's going to sort me out, because nobody needs 3 packets of tromboncinos. But the other thing that I'm going to do, which I am going to put online for Patreon, because we've got a Discord thing going on, and there's quite a lot of talk about restarting the seed swapping that I did last year. We were trying to like sort it out on there, and I think I'm just going to do a spreadsheet of all the seed that I've got, big list of that, and then I can keep the check boxes checked for how many seeds I've got, and then I know what I can give out and what I need or what I'm looking for. So yeah, God, there's loads of plans. This time of year, I get really, really excited about spring, which is probably a bit early because we're still in the midst of it really, but it's like that 1st of January excitement on what's going to happen next year on the plot. So I'm going to do a little bit of a scroll down here so you can see what I've got on there already. So in terms of the tomatoes, as you can see, there's a lot of the ones that I talked about early this year are still on there. There's a couple of new ones. I've added in green zebra. That was that green one that I just thought was brilliant this year, and I bought that completely by chance because I was doing panic buying in the garden centre. I don't have the Sun Gold seed. Because it's an F1, that's probably the only one that I won't grow from seed myself. I will just go and buy a plant. It's such a bog standard variety now that you get that in all the garden centres, so I'll just do that. But that, chaps, is my tomato varieties that I'm planning on for next year. If you think I've got any glaring holes in that list, let me know. And then we just kind of go down. I've got aubergines. Potatoes at the moment, I've only got the 3, so 1 variety of first early, second early, lates, because these were my absolute favourites. British Queen this year was a star. What a fantastic potato, so we're definitely going to do that. And Kerr's Pink was a complete fail. We got like tiny, tiny potatoes, but last year it was so good. I definitely want to do it again. My peppers and chilies list is long again. Like the tomatoes, the same thing happened to them as happened to the tomatoes, so it's a complete fail. So I've got quite a lot of things to try in there that I did start last year. You will have heard me talk about, but actually I never got round to trying because they haven't produced anything. Cucumbers, like I was saying early, the ones that I'm going to be growing at home is a variety called Socrates. It's quite a small cucumber, and I think that really helped with it like ripening really early, and we just had a constant supply of little tiny cucumbers. I say tiny, they're like this sort of size, just not like really long ones, you know, just like snack cucumbers. So I'm going to be doing that same variety again next year, and I need to remember that I used them all up last year, so I need to buy the seed for that. Melons, sugar baby watermelons, I've just bought the seed for, so quite excited. Never tried them before. Have you grown water? I mean, I know I wouldn't be able to grow like watermelons. These are like this sort of size, so I'm optimistic. Anyone else had any success? Courgettes, there's my lovely tromboncinos. Yeah, basically sticking with the same pumpkins next year, because although we didn't get any crown prince and I didn't sow the Marina de Chiogia, Ichikukuri has been great, and those and Crown Prince and Chiogia were my favourites from last year. My chard, look at my chard list. Peppermint, Lucullus, Bietta, rhubarb. That's the ones I'm going to be growing next year. I'm going to be doing Amelia and Americana spinach. I've got the tree spinach in there, although obviously it's a completely different family. And Malbar, I want to grow the green and the red. Peas and beans, hoping for a better bean year next year, because it was pants this year, apart from the Belotti, which have been fantastic. Garlic, notice there is a slot for garlic, but I haven't committed yet. If I do grow it, I'm going to be growing it in that polystyrene box that I've got currently in the greenhouse. So I am actually also including the things which are permanent resident on the plot, so things like the asparagus, just so that when I'm mapping out, so although there won't be a planting time, there will be a harvest time. I want to be able to see that I've got kind of quite a good swathe of harvest across the whole of the allotment, like for the whole year, so that I can see that I'm producing something all year round. So I'm going to put all the permanent stuff in there as well. So that's like the rhubarb, the 9-star broccoli, the cabbage trees, the asparagus, and also the fruit bushes and the fruit trees, the grapevine, the apricot, all of that kind of stuff. That will all be included in the list. Also including the herbs which are permanent, so that's like the rosemary, the thyme, the oregano, all of that kind of stuff. My lettuce categories at the moment are very, very slim. I haven't even got to that point yet, but have a look at my lettuce seedling drawer. Where is it? Salad leaf. It is completely full. That is just lettuces. What? I might need to go through them. How does a girl end up with this much salad seed? I just don't know. I just don't know. Anyway, yeah. So I'm working on it. Let me know if you would like for me to put this online, the base, like the blank version, or if you'd like me to just talk you through how to do it yourself. The good thing that I like about doing it on Google Sheets is that because it's free and it's online, you can access it from your laptop or your computer, but you can also look at it on your phone or an iPad or anything that's got internet. So that if you're at the allotment and you're like, blimmin' heck, where was I going to do that? Whip it out, it's all there. It's all there. That's one of the reasons that I've gone digital, because I really like doing the paper planning, you know, all that kind of stuff, but I don't find it adaptable enough. Like once you've put something in, you can't be like, oh, that hasn't worked, and then shift it, you know, it's just permanently in there, which is why I've gone digital. And also it means that I don't have to carry anything around with me other than my phone, which I've always got on me anyway. So yes, that, chaps, is the beginnings of this year's spreadsheet. Slightly different from last year's. Last year's was very much more about varieties and descriptions of varieties rather than planting dates, harvesting dates, and blocking them out actually in the allotment plan and working out where they're going to go. So I've had to move. The sun has just come streaming in that window and it's a bit in your face. Anyway, this week has been a bit of a stock take. got loads and loads of planning to do. I've got to redraw the map of the allotment because it's made lots of changes this year which weren't in place for last spring when I was doing the last bit of planning. So obviously we didn't, I've just realised I've still got my hat on. Oh, we've got Ninos. So last week obviously we didn't do a cheers and we ended on a bit of a sad note. This week's been a bit of a strange week, so taking a bit of a step back, which is why I kind of just had a look at what's going on at the allotment and starting to get the plan in place for next year. It's been a bit sad up there without Mills, so obviously somebody's missing. But there we go. That is the way of things. I want to say a huge thank you for all of the messages that I've had about Millie going. There's just been so many of them. I haven't got around to answering them all yet. I'm about halfway through. But I am going to do a cheers this week. Next week it's full on again at the allotment. I am going to get the blooming polytunnel door on. And I'm going to clear the polytunnel. We've got masses to do. It's pretty exciting. Yeah, it's going to be full on next week. We'll be back. We will be back in full action mode. So I hope you have an excellent week, chaps. I'll see you later. Cheers.